This is where we are now. We're experiencing a crisis of capitalism that takes different forms in different parts of the world. In some parts of the world, it's negative interest rates. In other parts of the world, it's very high unemployment. In other parts of the world, it is the bubble of private credit in China. But all these are different manifestations of the same crisis. You know, in Australia, there were floods 2 years ago in North Queensland and forest fires in Siberia. Okay? One was flood, the other was fire. They were both the results of climate change. They were the same crisis. In the same way that you have negative interest rates strengthening the alternative for Deutschland, in Greece we have whatever we have. I'm not going to go into it, it's too depressing. The network company, with digitization, has become a total and complete monster. Take Facebook. Facebook is a separate world. Huh? Anybody who goes into Facebook leaves capitalism behind, leaves society. You enter a world created by software, which is a gigantic economy, right? And there's no competition. It's owned by Zuckerberg. They charge you for, advertising events like this. They charge politicians for pushing their political campaigns. They have a remarkable behavior-altering mechanism. The only reason why two of you can communicate through some kind of app or software application is because somebody thinks they can manipulate you. And you know what? They are right, and they do manipulate all of us. We have been proletarianized without realizing it. We all work posting stuff, on Twitter, on Facebook, and so on. What is the capital of Facebook? It's your posts. That is the proportion of the... do you know what is the proportion of Facebook's revenue paid to its workers, to its design? Do you know what it is? 1%. Even Walmart, that is the most exploitative large company in the world, pays 40% of its revenues to its workforce. Facebook only pays 1% because all of you work for Facebook, and you don't even know it. You are simultaneously the proletarian and the consumer. This is remarkable. There is no capitalism in Facebook. It's like the Soviet Union. It's Gosplan. There are 3 people who make all the decisions. And they are far smarter than the Soviet Union was, because the Soviet Union had to have the KGB, they had to threaten you, they had to send you to the Gulag if you didn't behave. Facebook doesn't need to do that. They don't need to do what the British India Company did, which is to have 200,000 soldiers. They have the American army. American capitalism, whenever there's a problem, they send the troops. And they're paid by, the taxpayers. And some of them by us in Europe, or by Saudi Arabians, or whoever. So it's important, whatever your politics are, just to forget for the moment the economics without capitalism, because there is a real beast called capitalism that is doing things to our lives, and whose crises jeopardize both the planet and our soul. Back in the 1970s, I was always a leftist. Back in the 1970s, I remember the great conflict, political conflict, ideological battle, was between free marketeers who believed that the free market is a fantastic device for coordinating our preferences and allocating our resources, okay? But the objective was the satisfaction of the sovereign agent's preferences. My preferences were mine. My life was mine. I finished work at 5 o'clock, 9 to 5 work, then I worked in order to do what I want as a human being. Now what we have is a situation where, with digitization, young people, take young people, most young people fall in 2 categories. Either those without a trust fund, who have to face the prospect of precarious work for 20 years, okay? Or some of them who maybe because they have some skills, maybe they have a lot of social capital, they are much more connected to the high value-adding businesses. But even they have constantly to worry when they go to an interview. You know, they know that the interviewers are going to check their social media. They need, you know, I meet young people who are constantly worried, have they found their vocation? Because they go to interviews, and now there are these very, very modern-sounding interviewers who say to them, we want you to come and work for us if it's your passion. So they start worrying, what is my passion? And they're constantly trying to discover passions. You know, they go to shrinks, they buy self-help books. This autonomy of the liberal individual has gone. Everybody now is trying to emulate everybody else's view of what should their passion be. That is a kind of tyranny that the KGB could never imagine. It's too cruel even for the KGB. Because, you know, even when you are a prisoner of the KGB or the Greek right-wing fascist dictatorship when I was growing up, even in the cell, you were in command of your own faculties, and you knew who you were. And they couldn't, as Immanuel Kant would say, they couldn't take this autonomy away from you, however small the cell in which you were incarcerated. Today, we're all free in the land of the unfree. That's, for me, where capitalism is. As for democracy, where do I start laughing? The technostructure, the network firms, the hyperbanks, they own, don't worry, they own our politics. If you look at the way in which the powers that be in the European Union took 3.6 trillion since 2010, if you want, we can break it down. 3.6 trillion to save the banks. And now they're nitpicking over climate change. We have the Green Deal of the new president of the European Commission, who is promising 100 billion a year, and she only has 7.5 billion. The rest is going to be conjured up from thin air in the same way Juncker was going to conjure up stuff. Let me now finish up with the last part, markets without capitalism. My critique of capitalism is that liberal capitalism is not possible, never was, never will be. It is just an ideology. It has as much to do with reality as Marxist emancipation theory had to do with the Soviet Union. Zero. If we're going to save markets, because you say, I believe in markets for potatoes. Huh? We need to liberate them from the 1599 moment. Have you heard of companies like BlackRock, State Street, Fidelity? Do you know that they own 90% of the corporations that feature in the Standard & Poor's 500 in the United States? From airlines to JP Morgan to Google. We're talking about two guys, it's not girls. Maybe there's a token girl somewhere. They control 90% of capitalism. What is the connection between this and Adam Smith? Zero. As a recent study showed, that where airlines compete that belong to the same mega equity firm, when they compete, prices go up by 5% because they collude. Because the CEOs of all these airlines have to report to the same financier. So this is the point I'm making, that if you really want markets and you don't want central planning, you better do away with the model of capitalism we have, because it is centrally planned. There can be no more centralized system than the one we have. So What would a world look like where markets breathe in the absence of capitalism? Allow me to finish off, and then we start the conversation. With a dream. Can I have a dream moment, please? Will you allow me? The dream is multifaceted, but I'll just stick to 3 points now. Imagine a corporation where there is no boss. You enter, you are hired by a committee, a search committee that got together because they wanted an economist, they wanted a graphic designer. So some of them formed the committee, they interviewed 20 people, they hired you. You get 1 share for the company. You can't buy any. It's like a library card. You come to the university, you get a library card, whether you like it or not. And that gives you a vote for everything. You vote for the distribution of the revenues of the firm between research and development, what the basic income should be, and also you vote for bonuses. Not everybody gets the same, but how do you vote for bonuses? Do you remember the Eurovision Song Contest? Imagine everybody getting 100 bonus points, votes, and you can distribute them to any of your colleagues in proportion to your estimation of their contribution to the company. Yeah? And then when the tally of votes is in, everybody gets a percentage of the bonus fund in proportion to the votes they got from their colleagues. And when you leave the company, you take the accumulated capital, depending on your years and the bonuses you have, and you take it to whatever company, you form another company with friends, or you join another such cooperative company. Now, that's not pie in the sky. I've worked for such a company in Seattle, in Washington State. This is exactly how it worked. 330 people sharing 1.2 billion revenues. I'm not talking about some kind of rickety cooperative. Imagine further that each one of us had a bank account, a triple bank account, a bank account comprising 3 sub-accounts with the European Central Bank. A digital one. You'd never have to go to Frankfurt. Who wants to go to Frankfurt when they are in Tübingen? Right? One part of the account is a trust fund for every baby. A certain sum of money goes into that fund by the central bank to every newborn. The second one is where your bonuses accumulate. And the third one is where a universal basic dividend flows in. Well, a dividend of what? By the way, before I answer that question, the moment you have that, the banks die. There is no need to have commercial banks. It's a free, digital bank account. Why on earth would you want to have an account in Deutsche Bank to pay their fees? And also, investment banking has already died, because if you've banned tradable shares, if you reverse the mistake of the British India Company of 1599, and you have 1 share, 1 worker, shareholding together with private commercial banking producing money out of thin air, those two combine to create investment banking. Once you have no tradable shares and you have free banking, investment banks have no purpose anymore. There is a very boisterous bank for debt, for private debt. So what happens is your savings, you can, through this digital network, there can be some brokers as well, you can lend it to other companies, you can lend it to anyone. But it is money you've already earned. It's not money that's created from thin air. And finally, land. Imagine that every municipality has a citizens' assembly whose job is to divide the land in 2 lots. One is a commercial zone and the other is a social zone. The commercial zone is exploited commercially through markets in order to make money to build social housing in the social zone and social enterprise space. And how does the commercial zone work? Full-fledged markets, totally neoliberal markets. This is what I'm proposing. What do I mean by that? Imagine you have a building, you have your company, or a residential house. Maybe you don't want to live in social housing. Maybe you have enough money accumulated, and you want to live in a house of your choice in the commercial part. Yeah? Every 1st of January or first week of January, you have to go into a website and you have to declare what you think, your estimate of the commercial value of the properties. And you pay a rent or a tax, land tax, proportional to your declaration of what you think the value is. Of course, that means that you have an incentive to give a very low valuation. No, because there's a second rule. Anyone can come and bid for your home or your place of work, your office space, and if they outbid you, you're out within 6 months. So now you have an incentive to push it up. And all those rents accumulate to be a universal basic dividend and to pay for social housing. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all this is because I want to open your imagination up to how you can have fully fledged markets without capitalism. That, I think, is a nice juxtaposition against the economics without capitalism that students are taught. Thank you.